Ex-wife demanded a one-sided open marriage. I divorced her. Hello, true story. My name is Billy, and I've been watching your channel for a while now. But after everything that has happened these past couple of years, I feel like I need to get it off my chest. If it helps another man out there see the warning signs or stand up for himself, then maybe my pain won't have been for nothing. So let me take you back to 2018. That's when I first met the woman who would eventually become my ex-wife. At the time, I wasn't looking for anything too serious. I had just turned 30, was focused on work, and I figured love would come whenever it was supposed to. A buddy of mine invited me out to a food truck festival downtown. It was one of those big summer events with live bands playing, craft beers being served, and food trucks lined up for blocks. I wasn't even planning to go, but he talked me into it, and I guess fate had its way. I remember standing in line for some BBQ when I noticed her. She was about 3 people ahead of me, laughing with her friends. She had this carefree energy about her, smiling, talking loud enough that I caught bits of her conversation without even trying. There was something magnetic about her. I'm not the kind of guy to just walk up to women, but that day I felt like I had to. When she turned around, our eyes met for a split second. I gave her a smile and she smiled back. That was all the invitation I needed. After we both got our food, I worked up the nerve to say something about the crazy long line and how the ribs better be worth it. She laughed, and just like that, we started talking. Her name was Melissa. She was 27 at the time, working as an assistant manager at some retail store. She told me she loved food festivals, live music, and trying new things. We ended up sitting together on the curb, eating, talking, and losing track of time. Her friends eventually wandered off to check out another truck, but she stayed with me. By the end of the night, I had her number and I walked her to her car. That first week, we texted nonstop. She was witty, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in me. Within a month, we were official. Things moved fast, maybe too fast in hindsight. We were inseparable, spending weekends together, going out to restaurants, watching movies. She had this way of making everything feel exciting. I fell hard for her. By the spring of 2019, I proposed. People said it was quick, but I felt sure. We got married later that year, a small wedding with family and close friends. I was on cloud 9. I really thought I had found my person. Now here's where reality started creeping in. After the honeymoon phase, the grind of everyday life hit us. She struggled at work. Her boss was, in her words, a nightmare, constantly criticizing her, nitpicking everything, and putting her down in front of others. I could see the toll it took on her. She'd come home exhausted, in tears sometimes, and there were weeks where she barely wanted to leave the house. Depression settled in. As her husband, I felt it was my duty to step up. I started working more hours, 60 hours a week, sometimes more. I wanted to give her the breathing room to figure things out, to maybe take a break or find a new job. She kept saying she'd bounce back, but it never really happened. She'd spend days scrolling on her phone, joining random Facebook groups, baking bread at 2 a.m., or binge watching shows. I told myself it was just a rough patch and things would eventually get better. But here's the thing. True story. Working that much drained me. I was burning out. And with that, my libido dropped. I wasn't as interested in sex, not because I didn't find her attractive, but because I was just flat out tired. My body was in survival mode. When you're working 10 to 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, sometimes the last thing on your mind when you come home is intimacy. I tried explaining this to her, but she started taking it personally. Fast forward to late 2021. Out of nowhere, she sat me down one night. I thought she was finally going to say she found another job or wanted to start therapy. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "I think we should try an open marriage." Now, I know what you're thinking. True story. Couples explore all kinds of arrangements these days, but here's the kicker. She didn't mean both of us. She meant just her. She actually said, since your sex drive is too low, maybe I can get that part of me fulfilled elsewhere, and we can still keep what we have. I was stunned. I didn't even answer her right away. My heart sank, my stomach turned, and I couldn't even look at her. I nodded, said I was tired, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what she had just asked me. Something in my gut told me there was more to this. So while she slept, I started digging. I checked her phone, her laptop. I know some people will judge me for snooping, but in that moment, I needed to know. And sure enough, I found it. Messages with some guy she had met in a Facebook group. Turns out he lived in Springfield, Illinois, and was a college professor at a law school. Their conversations were flirty, crossing into emotional cheating territory, and in one of the messages, he actually said he'd be willing to drive all the way to Ohio to spend the night with her. That was all I needed to see. She hadn't just been thinking about an open marriage. She was already laying the groundwork. The next morning, I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I packed my bags, waited until she woke up, and told her flat out, "We're done." She tried to act confused, tried to downplay it, but I didn't give her the chance. I told her I knew about Springfield guy, I knew about the messages, and I wasn't going to be disrespected like that. I moved in with my dad that very day. It was humiliating in some ways, being a grown man hauling my stuff back into my old room, but it was better than staying with someone who betrayed me. The first thing I did was call a divorce lawyer. That's when the circus began. Attempt number 1. She showed up at my job. I work at a warehouse, and one afternoon she literally walked in, asking the receptionist if she could talk to me. When I came out, she was standing there with tears streaming down her face, saying she made a mistake, that she loved me, that the guy meant nothing. My coworkers were peeking around corners, watching the drama unfold. I told her to leave before security escorted her out. Attempt number 2. She went to my mom's house. My mother called me one evening, saying Melissa had been there for over an hour, crying and begging her to convince me to take her back. My mom, bless her, is loyal to the bone. She told Melissa flat out that she had ruined her chance, and that no one was going to guilt trip me into reconciliation. Attempt number 3, and this one was insane. She filed a missing persons report on me. I'm not kidding. One evening, I got a call from the local police saying they had received a report that I was missing. When I explained I wasn't missing, just staying with my father during a divorce, the officer sighed and said, "Sir, your wife is very concerned about your well-being." It was embarrassing, manipulative, and downright pathetic. By the time the divorce hearing came around, she was unraveling. She begged the judge for marriage counseling, claimed she could change, and at one point even threatened to harm herself if the divorce was finalized. She said she'd rather die than lose her marriage. It was disturbing to witness. The judge remained professional but firm, and in the end, the divorce went through. I'll be real with you, true story. Watching her spiral was tough. I knew she had dealt with depression in the past, especially because of that toxic boss, and I had worked myself half to death trying to give her space to heal. But after everything, after the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, I couldn't let sympathy drag me back into a marriage that was already dead. The divorce broke her. She went into a deeper depression than ever before. She stopped working, stopped socializing, and from what mutual friends told me, she completely lost it. As cold as it might sound, that was no longer my burden to carry. I had sacrificed enough. After the divorce was finalized, I felt this weird mix of emotions. On one hand, I was relieved. The weight of carrying a marriage by myself, of sacrificing sleep and my health to work 60 hours a week while she sat at home, was finally lifted. On the other hand, there was this nagging feeling of guilt. Not guilt for divorcing her, that decision was clear, but guilt because I knew she was fragile and I knew she was spiraling. See, I'm not a heartless man. I loved her once. I stood in front of my family, in front of her family, and I made vows to her. To walk away from that wasn't easy, even after the betrayal. But love without respect is poison, and that's what I had to remind myself. For weeks after, I replayed everything in my head. That night she asked for a one-sided open marriage haunted me. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., sweating, remembering the casual way she dropped that bomb, like she thought I'd nod and say, "Sure, go ahead and get your needs met elsewhere. I'll just stay faithful over here." The audacity of it still blows my mind. And the Springfield guy, the law school professor, what a joke. Here I was, breaking my back in a warehouse, putting in long hours, sacrificing time and energy for us, and she was daydreaming about being with some academic who probably thought she was an escape from his own boring life. I sometimes wonder if he knew she was married when they started talking. Either way, the messages I read were clear enough. They weren't just friends. When I told my father everything, he shook his head and said, "Son, you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed." That hit me hard, because for years, I thought I was doing just that, fixing things for her, fixing our finances by working more, fixing her moods by walking on eggshells and giving her space, fixing our future by taking the brunt of life's responsibilities. But at the end of the day, I couldn't fix her choices. Now let me circle back to those embarrassing attempts she made to win me back, because looking back, they almost feel surreal. That first time, when she came to my job, I can still see the looks on my coworkers' faces. They knew something was up. A couple of them tried to pretend like they weren't watching, but let's be real. Warehouse gossip spreads faster than wildfire. The second she walked in, makeup running, wailing about how much she loved me, everyone was tuned in. I felt humiliated. I don't embarrass easy, but having my personal life dragged into my workplace like that crossed a line. When I told her to leave, she actually tried to grab my arm. Security had to walk her out. The second time, when she begged my mom, I'll never forget my mother's phone call. She said, "Billy, that girl is sitting on my couch crying like a child. She wants me to convince you to forgive her." I braced myself, thinking maybe my mom would try to play peacemaker, but instead she said, "I told her she lost the best man she'll ever have, and that she should accept it." My mom has always had my back. Hearing her say that gave me strength. The third attempt, though, with the missing persons report, that one blew me away. I remember pulling into my dad's driveway and seeing a cruiser sitting there. The officer was polite, even apologetic. He said, "Sir, your wife reported you missing." I laughed, thinking he was joking. Nope, she had actually filed the report saying she hadn't seen me and was afraid for my safety. I had to pull out my ID, explain I was living with my father, and that I was in the middle of a divorce. The officer nodded, wrote something down, and said, "I figured something like that was going on. Sorry for the inconvenience." That night, I realized she wasn't just trying to get me back. She was trying to control me. That missing person stunt wasn't about concern. It was about tracking me down. Manipulation at its finest. By the time we got to court, she was desperate. I'll never forget the look in her eyes when the judge read the terms. She sobbed, begged for counseling, and when that didn't work, she blurted out, "If you grant this divorce, I'll kill myself." The courtroom went silent. My lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The bailiff stepped closer, and even the judge paused before speaking. He told her sternly that making threats like that was not acceptable. Still, it left a chill in the room. Part of me wanted to comfort her. That's the old husband in me, the guy who used to hold her when she cried about work, who told her she was stronger than she believed. But another part of me, the man who had been betrayed, humiliated, and disrespected, stood firm. I couldn't cave, and I didn't. The divorce went through. She walked out of that courtroom broken, while I walked out free. But freedom came with its own challenges. Living with my dad was humbling. He's an old school guy, set in his ways. He'd knock on my door at 6 a.m., telling me I was sleeping the day away, even though I'd just gotten off a night shift. He'd make little comments about how he never thought he'd see me back under his roof. It wasn't malicious, but it was hard on my pride. Still, I was grateful. I had a roof over my head, a place to regroup, and the space to plan my next steps. Meanwhile, I kept hearing through the grapevine that Melissa was falling apart. Friends told me she stopped going out, that she was drinking more, that she lost weight. She even posted cryptic stuff on Facebook, vague messages about losing everything and being betrayed. Betrayed? That one made me laugh out loud. She was the one who betrayed me, and yet in her version of the story, she was the victim. That's something I've learned. True story. Cheaters will always paint themselves as the victim. They twist the narrative so they don't have to face the ugliness of what they did. In her mind, she was a woman with a husband who worked too much, didn't touch her enough, and left her when she was struggling. Never mind the fact that she was messaging another man, inviting him to drive across state lines to sleep with her. I remember one night sitting with my dad, drinking a beer, and telling him how angry I was. Angry at her for betraying me, angry at myself for missing the signs, angry at the years I felt I wasted. He listened quietly and finally said, "Son, anger's natural, but don't let it set up camp inside you. Feel it, then let it go. Otherwise, she still owns you." That stuck with me, so I started focusing on myself again. I picked up some hobbies I'd let go of during the marriage: fishing, hitting the gym, even playing guitar again. I reconnected with old friends. Some were surprised to hear from me, since Melissa and I had basically isolated ourselves as a couple, but they welcomed me back. Work was still demanding, but I wasn't killing myself with overtime anymore. I realized that working myself into exhaustion hadn't saved my marriage, it had only drained me, so I cut back, gave myself room to breathe. Now, I won't lie, dating again felt impossible at first. My trust was shattered. Every time I thought about talking to a woman, I remembered Melissa's messages to Springfield Guy. But over time, I started to heal. And here's the thing. True story. I'm not writing this email because I want sympathy. I don't. I'm writing because men need to hear this. Sacrificing yourself for someone who won't lift a finger for you is a dead end. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership, not one person carrying the entire load while the other plays victim. Melissa thought she could disrespect me, demand a one-sided open marriage, and still keep me in her back pocket. She learned the hard way that I'm not that man. As for her now, last I heard, she's still in a bad place. She never went back to work, and from what mutual friends say, she's isolated, bitter, and depressed. Do I wish her well? Honestly, I don't even know anymore. I don't hate her, but I don't care either. She made her choices. I've made mine. Divorcing her was the hardest decision of my life, but also the best. I got my self-respect back. I got my peace back. And now I'm building a future where my time, energy, and love go to people who actually deserve it. Thank you for letting me share my story, true story. Writing this out has been a release I didn't know I needed. Sincerely, Billy.